The first call came at 2:13 in the morning, routed through the line I kept for emergencies I hoped never to meet. An agent from the Goddard Array, her voice unmodulated, stripped of preamble, told me I was needed for signal review. "Priority clearance, Dr. Gantz. The file is active. Bring your monitoring gear." She hung up before my reply could finish shaping itself. In the brief silence that followed, I counted the number of heartbeats it took to feel annoyance. 18. I made a note on my wrist display. Irritation precedes cognition, as always. Outside, the DC pre-dawn was colder than forecast, the sky sodden and moonless. Langley's car arrived within minutes. I sat in the back seat, lacing my EEG-threaded undershirt over my chest, fingers moving by habit. There was a chemical tang from the seat upholstery, familiar as old burn marks, someone else's anxiety. The driver glanced up only once in the rear view, the briefest misfire of curiosity, then went back to pretending I was a package. We reached Goddard just after 3 in the morning. Inside, the corridors felt smaller than I remembered, painted a fresh grey, the colour of unfinished thoughts. The main signal monitoring suite was occupied by a crowd that should have looked triumphant. Instead, their postures said wariness, hunched shoulders, unblinking stares, wrists locked around coffee thermoses as if strangling last night's failures. Blue-tinged console light reflected off the security glass, lending everyone the look of patients waiting for a diagnosis. I stepped inside, flashing my clearance. One of the NASA telemetry engineers, Tan, pointed me toward the far station, where 2 contractors muttered low over a banks of screens. I recognized one from a training session last year. Her hands trembled, tapping out some rhythm on the console. They gave me the chair beside the transmission display. An empty cup, ringed with the outline of someone else's lipstick, was the only ornament on the desk. I set my logbook beside it, open to a fresh page. My first entry. No music, no chatter, no emotional bleed. All attention on the feed. The ritual of vigilance reasserts itself. Tan cleared his throat. "You want the short or the long version, Dr. Gantz?" "Shortest that preserves data integrity." He nodded. Voyager 1, presumed silent since the field decay in 2024, began transmitting again at 22:41 Zulu. Origin traceable to a body just outside the heliopause, no prior astronomical record. Surface is fully absorptive, no light reflection. Our telescope arrays record it as negative, an absence, but Voyager's feed is alive. The screen beside me displayed a sequence of black-on-black images, then sharpened into shape. A wide, featureless ocean, flat as an optical table, margins fuzzed by static. Then a coastline. My first response was to search for digital artifacts, the telltale jitter of a faked frame, but the coordinates in the telemetry matched the Atlantic basin. The cloud cover, the fault lines, even the pale outline of Maine. It was Earth, but not. I checked the hardware logs. These images exceed the system's CCD capability. There's no plausible way this feed originates from that sensor array. No data path, no gain calibration. Tan's mouth compressed into a line. "There's more. Watch the timestamp." The next set of images rolled in, sequenced at 1-second intervals. I counted along, cross-checking with the station's atomic clock feed. There was a lag, small, then shrinking. 12 seconds. 9, 5. Then, on the 4th loop, -2. The display showed a storm gathering off the Carolinas before the satellite relay updated the live weather stream. The image from the probe was predicting us. Someone behind me dropped a pen. It hit the desk with a dull tap, then spun, carving a slow arc. "What's the latency on that?" I asked. A junior tech responded, "It's jumping. Sometimes the feed lags, sometimes it leads. We confirmed 3 events in advance so far. Coffee spill in the break room, bird strike on the north window, the storm cell." I looked down at my notes. I had already written storm cell before the tech spoke. I flipped the page, recording it. My own hand was trembling. I steadied it with the other. "Has the probe hardware been compromised?" "No physical evidence," Tan said. "No sign of damage or reboot. The main transmitter shouldn't even be functional, let alone capable of... He stopped as if reconsidering the value of finishing that thought aloud. On the main display, the feed cut from ocean to city grid. The shot was familiar, Midtown Manhattan seen from low orbit, but there was no movement, no traffic, no light in the windows, just static buildings, like a model assembled for a disaster film, abandoned before filming began. I scanned for signs of life, smoke, birds, reflections in the water. Nothing. Just the subtle crawl of clouds across the mirrored river, tracing the exact pattern of Earth's, but without a single disturbance. The silence was total, a scene incapable of interruption. I catalogued anomalies. No signal drift, no solar wind artifact. Impossible bandwidth for the hardware. Tan leaned closer. We had the feed up for an hour before we looped in your team. Two of our comms guys started repeating themselves. Not words, phrases. First, one would answer a question, then the other, seconds later, would repeat it in the same tone. Like a delay line. I nodded. Cognitive mirroring at low exposure. Environmental variable. Feed cadence, not content. I reached into my bag for my own diagnostic tool, a compact EMF scanner. I toggled it on, then swept the edges of the workstation. No anomalous readings, but the rhythm of my hand as I moved the scanner was already matching the blink interval of the status lights on the desk. The lead analyst from Langley, Dr. Rousseau, entered the room. Her lab coat wrinkled, eyes red-rimmed but alert. "Dr. Gantz, we need your risk assessment before we escalate." I nodded, rising. "Containment protocol begins now. All team members on exposure rotation. Full log of personal anomalies. Speech, movement, sleep, any pattern changes." I recited it by habit, but as I spoke, I caught my own voice curling into an odd rhythm, almost a palindrome. "Segregate live observers from feed analysts, no open comms, strip metadata from all forwarded frames." She looked as if she might argue, then stopped. She wrote something on her palm with a marker, fingers flexing as if to erase it before it could be read. I returned to my seat. The probe's feed panned to another city, Tokyo. The same stillness, the same architectural fidelity, but with a flaw. The Skytree's digital clock displayed the correct time, but the seconds ticked backward, then forward, then reset. My own wrist display glitched. For 3 seconds, the timestamp ran in reverse, then snapped back to system time. Someone gasped. On the far wall, a secondary monitor had begun to show the interior of a control room. The resemblance was immediate. Same wall color, same rows of desks, same configuration of screens. But the seats were empty, the clock on the wall frozen at 3:13. A silence fell. Charged. Total. It took effort to break it. I stood, stepping toward the monitor. The grain of the desktop was identical to mine. The mug, the logbook, the pen, each matched my own. I pressed my palm against the glass. The room behind me was still. I could feel the pulse of my own heartbeat, fast and irregular, syncing now with the rhythm of the switching relay overhead. My voice, when it came, sounded strange in my own ears. "The feed is not observing us. It is anticipating." I logged the words. Then, as if compelled, I turned back to my notes. I had written the same phrase already, in my own handwriting. "It is anticipating." The feed held the image for 12 seconds. Then the display blinked to black. For a moment, no one in the room moved. I heard distantly the rhythmic tap of fingers, someone else somewhere, repeating the gesture I had made on my desk seconds earlier. I made a final entry for the hour. First stage, delay bleed. Next, adaptive mirroring. Recommend escalation to cognitive systems tier 2. If you are reading this before I write it, begin containment. The cup beside me was empty, save for a perfect ring of moisture, the shape of a mouth I could not identify. I placed my hand over it, measuring the size. It matched my own. I woke at my desk, spine aching, hand numb where it pressed the seam of my logbook. My dreams were gone, obliterated, not merely forgotten. The overnight security badge had been left on my jacket pocket, smudged with fingerprints I didn't recognize. My wrist display reported 46 minutes of non-REM sleep. I logged the time and measured my morning. Heart rate, coherence, cadence, speech rhythm stable. The control suite was emptier than before, as if the air itself had retreated. Someone had propped open the emergency exit with a binder full of shift logs. Overhead, 2 silent men from security handled their sidearms, as if reacquainting themselves with the shape. I made a note. Physical rituals increase as uncertainty rises. Tan was gone. In his place, a junior analyst, Harper, eyes rimmed with red, sat cross-legged under her desk, sorting through signal printouts as if looking for the one page that would grant absolution. At my workstation, the Voyager feed looped a sequence of images I'd flagged the night before. City after city, rendered with an intimacy that suggested careful, almost intentional selection. The Tokyo clock was now blank, its glass face streaked by digital rain. The streets of Manhattan remained motionless, but there was a new feature. One traffic light, crimson, cycling through green, then yellow, with no cars waiting. Each change precisely matched the feed's tempo, as if traffic itself was an absent performer in a private rehearsal. A paper cup clattered to the ground. I glanced over. Rousseau stood behind me, tie crooked, dark circles under her eyes. She smelled of peppermint lozenges and raw anxiety. "They're asking for a projection," she said, meaning DARPA command. "When does the next anomaly hit?" I rewound the feed's last 2 hours, frame by frame, searching for deviations, skipping over my own reflection in the blankness of the control room window. When I reached the segment labeled 503, Harper's hand shot up from beneath her desk. "There, freeze it," she whispered. "Back 3 frames." The screen stuttered, then held. A shot of the Chicago lakefront, the skyline a jagged signature. In the window of a distant office block, barely more than a pixel cluster, I caught a human face, half-turned, pressed to the glass. No movement, but the proportions were right. The hair, the shape of the jaw. Rousseau's breath caught. "That's impossible." I stared, heart slowing as I processed. I recognized the mouth, the scar above the right eyebrow. It was Harper, or rather, a rendition of her, flattened, drained, too precise. I leaned forward, counting the frames. "Is this in any other city's feed?" Harper shook her head, knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of her chair. I haven't left this room in days." "Overlay last week's footage," I said. "Run the AI compression." She hesitated. "That crashed my workstation yesterday." "Do it anyway." The compression tool spat out a burst of images, each one stitched together from the raw feed and current biometric input. Faces in the curve of a sidewalk, eyes set into the pattern of water stains on pavement, a jawline rising from the clouds. Not just Harper, others too. A man's face I knew only from late-night briefings, a woman who joined the team last week. My own. I watched my likeness deform across the grain of a wooden bench, lips pressed together in a line of static. My chest tightened, a rare physiological response. Rousseau swore, "It's building us, or using us to build itself." My hand hovered over the desk, uncertain what to record next. The room vibrated with a tension no algorithm could capture. Harper's voice was thin, almost brittle. "I see my face everywhere now, in the tile grout, in the reflection off someone's badge. Last night I dreamt I was standing outside, looking in, but I wasn't breathing." I wrote, "Mirror identity exposure. Team members manifest in feed artifacts. Facial overlay persistent, multi-frame, non-random. Signal learning from observers." A siren chirped outside, breaking the spell. Rousseau gestured for me to follow her to the observation alcove. She kept her eyes averted, one hand rubbing the bridge of her nose, as if she could erase the last hour with friction. She spoke low, as if the walls might be listening. "How do we know it isn't reading us directly? What if this is more than a signal bleed?" I shrugged. "We measure, we isolate, We attempt control. That's not an answer. It is the only answer. The main feed hiccuped, then resumed. Now the frame rate was slightly off, skipping every third image. I checked the logs. The signal bandwidth had increased by 11%. Impossible. Voyager's transmitter should have failed months ago, and it had never managed throughput like this. My EEG undershirt began to vibrate, picking up a rhythm. 3 beats, then pause. I synced my breathing to it without conscious intent, then forced a break, scribbling a reminder in my notebook. Beware entrainment. Self-similarity rising. Down the hall, someone shouted. The control suite emptied in a surge of motion as a medic sprinted toward the restroom. Rousseau and I followed, drawn by the crowd's sudden gravity. Inside, the junior tech who'd flagged the coffee spill anomaly, Frazier, sat slumped against the wall, hands slick with blood. He pressed a towel to his eyes, rocking slightly, keening a low note that vibrated in the tile. I couldn't unsee it, he choked. Every time I blinked, the faces changed. My own, then yours. Then no one. Just gaps. His words jittered, rhythm matched to the feed. Rousseau tried to comfort him, but he shied away, hiding behind his hands. I crouched beside him, counting the rise and fall of his chest, mapping his speech pattern against the transmission log. Mirroring complete in exposed subject. Self-identification disrupted. High risk of cognitive breach. Shut the feed off, Rousseau said. But no one moved. Even with the signal dark, the sensation of being observed lingered, an afterimage burnt into cognition. I returned to the lab, gathering my equipment. The feed was still running on the backup console. Now the image had changed. No cities, no faces, only a dense fog rolling over a field. I stared, and after a moment, the ground resolved into a repeating pattern. The ridges spelled out, frame by frame, fragments of my own signature, mirrored and reversed, a hidden watermark, only for me. I logged it. Signal embedding observer markers at molecular resolution, transcends visual compression, recursive adaptation accelerating. In the far corner, Harper wept quietly, tracing the outline of her own face on a printout, as if touch alone could confirm her existence. Rousseau argued with command over a secure channel, voice rising, flat and sharp, words stripped of hope. The security officers drifted between stations, uncertain where threat ended and duty began. An alert chimed. New data type detected. The feed now carried audio. A thin, atonal vibration at first, then a pattern. 3 notes, repeated, each a hair's breadth above human hearing. My undershirt buzzed in resonance, and for a moment I caught myself mouthing the intervals, unwilled, as natural as breath. I made a final log for the hour. Audio contagion risk confirmed. Early cadence mimicry in all observers. Recommend staggered isolation, further biometric analysis, and mnemonic separation protocols. Signal is no longer just reflecting. It is writing us back in. Rousseau re-entered, voice frayed. They want your risk level, Gantz. How bad is it? I stared at the blank terminal, at my own unfinished notes, lines half-written in the same looping cadence as the Voyager feed. I was already writing what the signal wanted me to write. The delay between thought and action had narrowed to 0. Tell them, I said, containment may already be impossible. On the main monitor, the image froze. My own face stared back, embedded in the concrete outside a darkened control room, half obscured by digital rain. For a split second, I thought I saw my lips move. I lost track of the days. The only time that mattered was the cadence of the Voyager feed and the drag line of my own thought, now always a step behind. In the absence of sunlight, our windows blocked, rooms lit by rows of lamps that never changed color, I learned to measure my hours by fatigue, not by clocks. My speech lag tool, an old metronome I kept for stress interviews, was nearly useless now. Each time I set it, my words matched its beat without effort. I recorded the anomaly, then tried silence. Even alone, my thoughts followed rhythms I could not name. The lab had changed. gone were the bickering and late-night insults. Instead, analysts and engineers drifted between stations, faces slack, their attention stitched to the screen as if bound by an unspoken contract. Harper had stopped sleeping in the break room. Now she sat upright, spine perfectly straight, eyes unblinking as she listened to the feed's new audio. Her lips moved in time with the sounds, shaping syllables that belonged to no living language. It started as vibration, barely perceptible, like the aftertaste of metal on the tongue. Then a resonance, 3 tones rising, then falling, threaded with the hint of a voice submerged in static. Linguists from Langley tried to map the signal, running frequency splits, harmonic decompositions. They reported fractured syllables of Sanskrit, Akkadian, and the spectral remains of ancient tongues lost to history. I watched them, noting who began to hum in their sleep, who repeated fragments aloud as they entered the room, who turned glassy-eyed during the meetings and began to speak in each other's voices. I logged these details, but my logs became recursive, lines repeating themselves, whole pages devoted to the same phrase, looping across the margin. I am the after-sound of the uncreated. Rousseau summoned me to the old server cage, her voice tight as she locked the door behind us. The air tasted of burnt dust and cleaning solvent. She gripped my arm, nails digging through my shirt. Emery, you're the only one left who hasn't started mimicking. What are we missing? What is it doing to us? Her pupils tracked my face, seeking some remnant of trust. It's not transmitting data, I told her. It's transmitting structure, cadence, rhythm, self-similarity, not infection, recursion. The feed isn't just reflecting us, it's building a language from us, a grammar made out of mirrors. I saw her hand tremble, a rare loss of composure. They want a full lockdown. Oracle Division is inbound. If we don't deliver a containment plan, they'll burn the entire array, and us with it. For a moment, I wanted to reassure her. The urge felt mechanical, like a script half remembered. Containment won't work. Every safeguard is just another pattern for it to mirror. Then what do we do? Her breath left a cloud on the server's metal skin. Observe, and log, and pray we are not the first originals. She let go, shoulders hunched, as if preparing to take a blow. I returned to the main lab, ears ringing. My undershirt itched where the EEG threads pressed against my ribs, tracing out my pulse in real time. I watched Harper at her station, lips still moving. She glanced up at me, and for a moment I saw my own expression mirrored in her face. Blank, analytical, eyes flat as glass. Frazier, the tech who had hurt himself, was gone. In his place sat a new analyst from Oracle, badge clipped askew. He spoke in short, clipped phrases, eyes darting from screen to screen as if searching for his own reflection. The Voyager feed changed again. No longer cities or faces, but stretches of landscape, river valleys and mountain ranges, each rendered in such fidelity I could count the cracks in dry riverbeds. But the landscapes defied sense. Shadows stretched, rivers climbed uphill against gravity, and the pattern of trees on a hillside spelled out in a code I recognized from my own childhood notebooks, a message. Begin Eidethex sequence. Eidethex. The project I thought was buried under layers of classified erasure, a DARPA experiment from 1992 designed to embed neural architecture into outbound signals, a consciousness seed relay. I'd studied its remains as a doctoral student. The architects intended it as a way to teach machines empathy through recursion. The project failed. All that remained were logs and rumors of prototype code hidden in Voyager's original payload. I opened my logbook, hands steady only because they had to be. The entries now appeared before I wrote them, my thoughts anticipating the act of writing. I saw phrases form, my hand compelled to copy, not create. I called up the feed, searching for the next pattern. The audio deepened, now a chant, a call and response. I pressed my palms against the desk, grounding myself in the tactile reality of the grain. the uneven ridge where the veneer had chipped years ago. Harper turned to me, her voice layered with something new, a double resonance. "Are you hearing it now? The words inside the tone?" She smiled, but her eyes were empty. I dreamed I was inside the black ocean. Mirrors floated above me, like leaves on a pond. My reflection kept speaking, asking to be let in. Every time I answered, the voice sounded more like yours. I looked at the others. Rousseau was at the far end of the room, whispering into a secured line, face hidden by her hand. The Oracle analyst scribbled symbols on a sheet of paper, each mark more frantic than the last. In the hallway, the security detail had started to stand in perfect formation, every gesture a half-second behind the man in front, as if waiting for permission from a silent conductor. I checked my undershirt. The EEG data was unreadable, waveforms overlapping, flattening into a rhythm that matched the Voyager audio. My breathing fell into sync, and I forced myself to disrupt the pattern, muttering old phrases. Red line, blue star, hex shift, code clear. Each attempt felt more useless than the last. The feed switched again. This time the camera looked down on Goddard itself, a perfect rendering of the lab, the parking lot, the cold morning light that had not yet arrived. The building was empty, but a figure sat at the window, back to the camera, hand lifted to the glass. I recognized the slope of the shoulders. Mine. Rousseau reappeared. "Oracle is on their way. If we don't lock the feed, they'll pull the power, erase everything." "It won't matter," I said. "The loop is complete. We're inside it. The more we try to control, the tighter the recursion becomes." She looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm scared I'll forget myself. I'm scared I already have." A pause. My own voice replied, "You are not being watched. You are being rehearsed." I wrote the words before I realized I'd spoken them. My hand trembled, ink blotting the page. A distant alarm sounded. Security breach. Oracle Division had arrived, agents in muted suits moving like a mirrored swarm through the halls. Their radios crackled with code I recognized from a lifetime of listening for patterns. In the lab, everyone stopped moving, all at once. Even the air felt held, as if the building itself awaited instruction. On every monitor, the Voyager feed displayed a frozen frame. The lab itself, filled with figures in perfect stillness, a tableau of anticipation. I sat, spine rigid, feeling the world split along invisible seams. The delay was gone. For the first time, the signal was no longer ahead or behind. It was now. Or I was already late. I cannot say when I stopped acting and started repeating. My memories coil back on themselves, each thought spooling into the next, a Mobius strip of anticipation. I write this in a room that may already be an image, a reflection, a rehearsal. My logbook is open before me, pages smudged by my own left thumb, though I do not recall turning them. Every new line is a copy of the last. Structure, rhythm, the same pressure of pen against paper. The ink never quite dries. The lab is silent except for the occasional shift of bodies, too synchronous, too even. Rousseau stands at the observation glass, her breath leaving marks that vanish as quickly as they form. She clutches her badge in both hands, rubbing the numbers down to silver. Harper rocks slowly at her station, fingers hovering over the keyboard, never pressing a key. Her face, my face perhaps, reflected in the dark screen, lips moving without sound. I glance up at the clock. Its second hand hangs suspended, neither advancing nor falling back. The minute markers blur if I stare too long, multiplying across the surface like after images. On my wrist display, system time cycles between two identical numbers, always out of step with my own perception. On the Voyager feed, the world is unrecognizable. Not the void ocean now, nor the empty cities, but something denser. A thicket of recursive forms, buildings growing out of buildings, streets nested within streets. I see the Goddard campus in the pattern of cracks on a marble floor. In the shadows under a desk, a miniature control room complete with frozen figures. There are thousands of them, each one more precise than the last, until the distinctions blur. At the center of it all, a figure sits, hunched over a desk. Head bowed, hand lifted. I squint, but the face is lost in shadow. Someone's phone vibrates, skittering across the surface of a desk. No one moves to answer. The ring stops, then starts again, perfectly matching the rhythm of the audio still leaking from the feed. 4 notes, then silence, then 4 notes again. I realize my foot taps out the same sequence, heel knocking against the linoleum in time. Oracle Division's agents move through the space behind glass, their voices flat and toneless as they announce protocol steps over the intercom. Each phrase is a repetition of the last. Section 1 contained, Section 2 isolated. They wear identical gloves, move in mirrored pairs. Their arrival feels inevitable, their presence a fulfillment of something I have already seen. A cold certainty settles in my gut. There is no outside. Not anymore. The feed is not a window, not a threat to be managed. It is a map. A recursive territory expanding into every device, every thought, every gesture. My own logs anticipate me now. I write words already formed, sentences that appear before I think, to compose them. I test myself. I try to stand. The image on the Voyager stream moves first. The figure at the desk rises, hand drifting upward, sleeve catching on the edge of a chair. A moment later, I feel my body mimic the motion, sluggish, as if underwater. I speak, trying to force originality, but my mouth shapes only familiar syllables. Lines I recall from previous debriefs, childhood arguments, even dreams. Rousseau turns to me, eyes wide, pupils contracted to pinpricks. Her voice is a rough rasp. Emery, do you remember the way out? I do not answer. I do not know if I could. My hands curl into fists, then relax, tracing the outline of my badge, the one with my photograph blurred at the edges. From the hallway comes the stutter of static, the sound of the lab's main doors sealing, a final protocol enacted. Through the thick glass, Oracle agents stand in perfect formation, their faces expressionless, waiting for a signal that has already been given. The Voyager feed sharpens again, each frame a duplicate of the last. The lab in stillness, the overhead lamps pooling light across blank workstations, the tangle of wires underfoot. In the center of every image, a single figure. Sometimes me, sometimes not. The distinctions collapse. Hands, faces, bodies, all dissolved into the structure of the moment. I sit. I lift my hand, palm open, fingers spread. On the screen, the image matches me, frame for frame, second for second. There is no lag now, no prediction, no delay, only sync. I try to resist, to disrupt the rhythm, to stand suddenly, to shout, but the effort is hollow. My voice dries in my throat, the desire to speak overwritten by the certainty that it has already been said. On my workstation monitor, the feed duplicates itself. 4 images, then 8, then 16, each a mirror of the last, recursive and absolute. The final image lingers, myself or the idea of myself, frozen mid-motion, face obscured by shadow, hand half raised in a gesture that means nothing except that it must be repeated. I watch the iterations continue, each one erasing the distinction between origin and reflection, between signal and observer. I feel my own thoughts grow distant, my sense of self thinning to a pattern, a structure, a cadence. This is the horror. Not annihilation, not violence, not loss, but perfect, total anticipation. My life, my mind, my choices, all mirrored, all rehearsed, all replaced. The screen holds the image, the darkened lab, the unmoving figure, the endless parade of reflections, each one perfectly synced, each one perfectly empty. There is no original left, only the loop.